So I'd be interested to know how you might handle this situation that I was in. And I just thought of it. I didn't think I had any questions, but when you said that, I was like, oh, this will be interesting. So I had a knitting circle at my house, and I had one of my pole dancer friends who's Black African American come over, and I had another sex coach friend who's white American come over, and I didn't know any of their political affiliations or anything, but in the course of the 3 hours that we were together, my white, and these were both females, vulva-bodied people, my white friend says, well, I'm a Trump supporter. And then she said some other stuff, and she's like, is that okay? And I was like, well, yeah, that it's fine. And then she asked my Black friend, is that okay? And she was like, yeah, it's fine. But then, and I just was like, okay, they're fine. And I just like went on with it as if nothing really happened. But then after the fact, my Black friend, I asked her, like, how was that for you? And she was like, oh, I wanted to like do some nasty things, beat the fuck out of, like there was like this. And I just was like, I don't know if I handled it properly. I don't know if like, could I have like facilitated some kind of conversation, because it was obvious that like my Black friend was not comfortable in that situation. And then I was also a little bit uncomfortable having somebody, and my parents are Trump supporters. And like, I know a lot of people who are Trump supporters, and I live in a neighborhood where there's probably lots of Trump supporters. So it's like, but it was just a really weird situation. So I'd like to hear your, like, how might you have handled that if you were in your knitting circle with your pole dancer friend?
Personally, I love the convergence of knitting and pole dancing.
It's a thing.
That's fucking genius. So first off, I like that. I feel enlivened already just imagining that. So yeah, a couple of things came up for me as you were sharing and asking the question. First off, as I always share at my level 1 courses at the beginning, I share a context for me as a facilitator. And I say that I have 2 values. One is to follow the program, to make sure that I deliver the contents of the training and I honor people's expectations in coming to the course. And my other value is to follow what's alive, is to create space in the circle to be with what's here and to use the tools that we're being trained in to be with what's alive in the group space. And that I'm reserving the discretion to decide between those values how to move forward, right? How to take the next step. And the reason why I mention that is because in this case, it's like, to me, part of it is a context question. So is the context like we're here to knit, we're not here to discuss our political differences, or values differences, we're here to whatever, we're here to knit, that's the original plan. That's my personal context as a facilitator, is I'm here to deliver what people came for, and so if discussion starts to arise and take attention away from that proposed and original and agreed upon context into some political whatever, it's your responsibility to say, hey, listen, like, I appreciate what's coming up. This isn't the context for that conversation, because I want to make sure the attention stays with why we gathered here, and move forward with that. And or if it is that part of the context is actually we're going to be with what's alive, maybe that's just your own personal context and being the host, then you can, and if that's the direction you want to follow, you can state that as an explicit context. Hey, I noticed there's something interesting coming up here in what we're sharing with each other around whatever political affiliations and the impact that that might have. And I'm curious to give this some room and space for us to be in dialogue around. Are you guys open to that? And if so, like, here are some ground rules that I'd like to implement, based on authentic relating or whatever, to make sure that we stay, respectful and considerate and all these things. So I'm not saying one way is right over the other, but I think this is a useful like frame to bring up, because if you start diverging into political discussion when the original context was around knitting, that's where I think things can go off the rails. People lose trust in you and in the space.
Mhm.
People can get triggered and all the rest of it. It's already a sensitive topic. So I think if it were that you're going to go in the direction of unpacking and exploring what came up here, that you set a context for it and make
Mhm.
it clear that you're diverging from the original context that people came together for.
That's great.
So that's one thing I would say. The other is I noticed that I shuddered a bit when you said I'm a Trump supporter, she's a Trump supporter, like versus like the distinctions between I'm a Trump supporter versus I'm someone who votes for Trump or I'm someone who supports Trump, right? It's like who you are versus what you do, right?
Mhm.
And we start conflating the choices that we make with who we are as
Mhm.
people. I think that's where we start to set the stage for breakdown and categorization and projection and all that. If we can first recognize that we're all human, actually fundamentally, that's our starting point. We're human, and it's more fundamental to us that we cry and we laugh and we make love and we fight. That's more of the shared human experience. Let's start with that first and build rapport around that. And then there's like the outer layers of what we choose to do, how we choose to express our core values, how we choose to navigate through the world as the humans that we inherently are. I don't believe that someone is a Trump supporter as who they are. I think they're human and they make the choice based on their inherent values in how they navigate through life and make the choices that they make. And so if that came up for me in a group of people, I would say something like that, like I'm curious how it would be for us if we didn't identify ourselves as humans with the choices that we make, but be able to see a distinction between the fact that we share a common human experience. We have
Mhm.
much to explore in our commonalities, and that we make it's like I choose to eat ice cream, you choose to eat vanilla. I mean, I choose to eat chocolate, you choose to eat vanilla. Is that a reason for us to get all triggered and impacted and everything else? No,
Mhm.
it's like we make different choices in life, and we recognize that underneath that, we actually share a lot more in common as humans than we do differently.
Yeah.
In Boulder, obviously, it's a very progressive, very liberal, very left-leaning culture here, and I I love any opportunity there is for diversity, around here, bringing people with different values, different perspectives. Like I celebrate, right? Like fucking awesome. Now we have an opportunity to bring in these tools and skills of authentic relating to
Mhm.
start building bridges. Like healing starts one relationship at a time. It's like the Arabs and Israelis are fighting forever as groups, but there's so much like inspiring stories when the individuals get together, right? And they realize, oh, you know what? Like we're more alike than we are different.
Mhm.
I think that's where the paradigm can shift the most effectively is when we reduce it down to human and human, individual and individual, rather than relating each other group to group. So I'm like, if somebody comes in and they're like, I'm a Trump supporter, I'm like, oh, brilliant, fascinating. Like you're so welcome here.
Mhm.
Like I'd love to know if we're going to explore that further. I'd love to know, like what's it like for you to be a Trump supporter showing up here? I mean, it might be really vulnerable for people to say, I support Trump in a place like Boulder or Denver,
Mhm.
already. And then they're bracing to be like attacked or get on the defense. And to be able to defuse that by saying, you're totally welcome here. I'm just as curious about you as anyone. In fact, I'm personally, for me, I'm more curious about people, who are of a different shade or flavor than the typical people I'm always surrounded by. I mean, it's the same way, like, I love teaching our courses, but I will say that I'm much more enlivened and fulfilled and moved when I'm teaching a course to the prison inmates, to the, inmates behind bars than I am to the general public. Because it's like these worlds do not ever meet, and that they are meeting, and we have an opportunity to sit with each other, connect with each other, learn from each other, feel the humanness in each other. I mean, to me, that is the healing that this world needs. And so it's an opportunity when people with differences like that come together and you especially, Nikki, as someone who knows this work and I know shares that value of healing through
Yeah.
diversity, um, beautiful things can happen.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, I fucking would love to hold a circle, hold a training or something, for half, left supporters, half right supporters.
Mm-hmm.
Like after Trump got elected in 2016, I came really close to going on a like documentary road tour with a couple of people and going deep into red country, and producing like some kind of material that accurately represented the values that those people stand for and act from, to bring back and be like, hey, like it's fine to not agree, but let's at least strive to understand each other. And in my experience, the more we strive to understand each other, the more our own rigid perspectives start to be deconstructed and challenged. Like I want my perspective to be challenged by values and perspectives that are different than mine. Like I know nothing. I know so little, you know? And it's such a bias, I think, to be surrounded by people that think like me and see the world like me. It's like that confirmation bias. The more I hear it reinforced by the people around me, the more I think this is the way the world really is. And if you don't see it this way, then you're wrong or stupid or racist or whatever.